Hello party people, welcome to the show. My name's Relevant and this is Do All the Things. On today's episode, 3 output transformers compared on a Jet City JCA50H. We got the stock Jet City transformer, we got a JCM800 transformer, and we got a Fender twin transformer, trying to figure out which one would be great if we're building a Soldano clone. How are they gonna sound? Let's find out. Now, one of the reasons why I'm doing this as an experiment is because I was recently commissioned to do an SLO clone. And under these circumstances, we're basically pulling the transformers out of this JCA head to use because this JCA is effectively a Soldano. The transformers are spec'd out identically. Now, there is a range of motion you have when choosing a power transformer because as long as it hits certain specifications and checks certain boxes, it's gonna do the job. Your amplifier is going to sound and respond the way it should, even if it's not exact. However, what has more of a bearing on your overall tone is going to be your output transformer. Obviously, it's in the signal path. So we're trying to determine here what is going to be an alternative. Now, of the transformers available on the market that are cheap and plentiful, you have Hammond, MFG, a Canadian company that I'm quite fond of. And in their normal line of output transformers, their 1650A series, they are kind of touted to be audiophile grade transformers. And if we look at the specifications of a transformer roughly in the range of what we need, right there, it admits a frequency response of 30 hertz all the way up to 30 kilohertz, which is great for stereo systems and audiophile amplifiers, but not so much for guitar amps. That's a bit wide of a range. Guitars do not go down to 30 and they do not go up to 30. And in fact, part of what makes a guitar amp sound great are the certain flaws in the circuit. The fact that they're not high fidelity. The fact that a transformer or a tube can have a natural, warm, high-end roll-off. And if we stick an audiophile transformer on there, we might start hearing things that we don't like a little bit too much fuzz or weird ringing, stuff like that. Now, I've used Hammond transformers in the past for clone builds, and yeah, they might have a hard-hitting, punchy low end, but then the high end is just kind of like, ooh, it's a bit too much, bud. We need to tame that back a bit. Also, these Hammond transformers, they tend to be on the slightly higher end of the price range, and that's only a 50-watt model. However, that said, Hammond does have a line of replacement transformers for favorite amps. Here we have all sorts of options. Just click on your amp and it's going to show you the transformers that go along with it. These transformers also will clock in at being quite a bit more affordable. $120 for a 100-watt output transformer, that's pretty good, as long as, you know, the tone is there. Now, they don't make Soldano transformers, but, you know, reading between the lines, you might find something that fits. Now, in here, you can find quite a bit. We have 100-watt and 50-watt JCM800 transformers. Up here, we got all sorts of Fender-rated transformers. And if you look at the specs, written right on the transformer itself, we got 70 hertz to 15 kilohertz. Still pretty wide for a guitar amp, but that's a lot better. So again, what do we have here? That's the stock JCA transformer. It's rated for 2.2K a leg. That's 4.4K total. And that is what the Soldano is spec'd out for. 4.4K, 50 watts, 2.2K at 100 watts. Now, Marshall, well, 3.2K. That's a little bit less than what we want for 50 watts, but it should do the job if it sounds right. But enter this guy. This guy I bought specifically to try out for these builds, and this is a 1750D. According to Hammond, it's a replacement transformer for a Fender twin, but not just any twin, the twin, the red knob twin. The one that is less liked among Fender aficionados, but that doesn't mean it has a bad transformer. Maybe it had a more modern design and that's the reason why it didn't have that vintage tone. I don't know. But this guy clocks in at 2350 ohms, 2.3K, which at 100 watts, and this is a 100-watt transformer, puts us like right on the nose of where we want to be. But it gets worse. In testing, at 100-watt configuration, I measured a resistance of 2.29K. That's even closer. And in a 50-watt configuration, 4.48. So, like, this is right on the nose what Soldano is speccing out for. Now, if we compare it to the JCA transformer, dimensionally, they're very, very similar. It's just a touch narrower this way. The core is thicker on the Hammond. Height-wise, the JCA is taller. So it's hard to tell which is physically larger unless we start measuring and doing like cube math, but it looks like they might roughly have the same amount of core heft to them. Judging by these boxes, it looks like the bobbins or the, windings might be about the same. Now what's odd is this is their 50 watt transformer, but that's a 100 watt transformer. What's up with that? You see, the JCA and the Soldano are based on what's known as a preamp gain topology. They generate all their distortion in the preamp, and the power amp is just to make it louder. These amps do not go for the cranked amp tone a la vintage Marshall. We're not supposed to be getting power amp distortion. We're not supposed to be getting phase inverter distortion. We want that power amp to stay as clean and tight as possible. As a consequence, amps in this design tend to have oversized output transformers so that those cores can't saturate. So that's kind of what we're going for here. Even though this is a 100 watt transformer, I'm kind of overcompensating. I'm getting a 100 watt transformer, running it at a 50 watt configuration so that it could be able to give me all the headroom that I need and accurately replace this guy. And what do I mean by a 50 watt configuration? Well, it's simple. If we plug a 16 ohm cab into the 8 ohm secondary, it's going to double the impedance that the primary puts on the tube. So this is a 2.2K transformer. If we say put the 16 into the 8 or put an 8 ohm cab into the 4 ohm secondary, the tubes are going to see the 4.4K load that they need. So that's essentially, I've bought a 100 watt transformer to replace a 50 watt transformer, because this amp, well, the amp's mine, but my buddy bought the transformers for his SLO build. I'm the experimental one who wants to play with different transformers to see what I can get this guy to do, but he wanted his SLO to sound as SLO as possible, and well, what better than a transformer designed by SLO to be a reasonably drawn facsimile? So that becomes his. To make this experiment happen, what we've gone and done here is I've taken the primary wires out of the amp, the high voltage wires. I've put them into this terminal strip so that I can connect on a transformer externally, and relatively safely for that matter. And then this particular amp, when I got it, the feedback circuit was wired to the 8 ohm tap. That's contrary to the schematics I have for it, but that's how it was. So I'm gonna leave it like that for now. And to service the feedback circuit, basically we got our cab plugged into one jack here, and then I went ahead and wired these two jacks in parallel. So if I go ahead and plug the transformer into that jack, it's going to pass the signal through to the cab, and it's going to allow the feedback circuit to get the signal that it needs to work. So now without further ado, well, let's tear into it and see what we hear. Okay, reference. And if you haven't noticed, I'm a metal player. Sorry if I'm not going to play AC/DC licks for you, like all the other guys who test amps online. But then, this is a high gain amp. I'm going to do high gain tone testing. So now let's go ahead and switch out this transformer, and we're going to try the Marshall next. Oh, by the way, this is a dangerous experiment because, we got about, almost 500 volts right here. I know that when I put this circuit into standby mode, it cuts power to those wires, but you can't be too fast because it might cut power to the circuit, but the capacitors are still slowly discharging after. So, I don't know. I can't recommend you do this at home unless you have intimate knowledge of how your amp works. Now, this Marshall transformer, the wiring is a bit different. I connect the anode lines first because, if there is some power in there, it's going to be coming out that center. Also using a plastic screwdriver. All right, Marshall's connected. Can we hear a difference? Immediately, there's a difference in the high frequency texture. This Marshall transformer's got a little bit more, I want to say crunch, but it's definitely a touch brighter, and it might have more definition. It sounds a little bit less mushier than the stock transformer, but then that brightness, it could work against you. But it almost sounds like I could set up the circuit in this amp, I could voice it a touch darker if I want, with maybe, you know, an anode snubber on one of the preamp tubes to take the edge off, and then have that nicely made up for by the transformer. It's interesting. And now, the moment I've been waiting for, because I did noodle with the Marshall transformer on this amp a little bit last night, but this 1750D, I bought this to install into this amp, so I'm really hoping it's gonna take the cake. So here we go. Again, because I'm running this in a 50 watt configuration, I'm connecting the 4 ohm tap to be used with an 8 ohm load. This guy has more wires too. We're kind of getting lost here. All right, here's hoping I am not disappointed. I would love it if this amp was, this was just a little darker maybe. Okay, bud, that was, I've had that happen before. That's telling me that I got my phasing backwards. That's, if, you know, your two anode connections, your blue and your brown, they have to be in phase relatively with what's going on here so that your feedback circuit's in phase. You should compare that to the Marshall transformer. Oh, see? Blue is on that side of the phase. All right, our blue and our brown are backwards. Brown is on the common phase. That's what's going on here. We need to flip these guys around. If there's one thing I've learned playing with these transformers, that there's no rhyme or reason for the color coding. There's no standard. Even when you think it's standard, like a blue and a brown, it could be backwards. Okay, this time for sure. Where'd our pick go? Did it go flying? Okay, I feel like the isn't as much as the Marshall. It's not as bright, but it still has that similar, I'm guessing this is a Hammond thing, similar texture and similar definition. Again, I'm finding it less mushy than the stock JC transformer, but it has some more warmth to it. It's got this warmer lower end. Now, if we look at the specifications of these transformers, the 1650D has a primary inductance of 10.2H. And the 6015N, well, 18H, that's technically more. They say the higher that number, the better the bass response you're gonna get. So far, I think I'm gonna be happy with this transformer. I'm not gonna be disappointed. Hey, I need to put the JCA tranny back in place to see how it compares. I'm liking the low mids out of this guy so far. It helps those notes really come through. You know, sometimes in high gain, all you guys, but you know, you have a little bit more of oomph in the low mid, then it just doesn't, it's like, you can actually hear the notes better. Okay, stock transformer back into place. Yeah, I definitely like the low mid on this better. Nice. I don't regret this purchasing decision. I was worried I was gonna buy this and really not like it. It's a touch brighter and a touch more low mid, but you know, it's gonna work. It's gonna replace the transformer in this guy really well. Should we go back to the Marshall real quick? Truth be told, I added the Marshall for the lows. I don't really care how it sounds in this amp because it's not for this build. I bought that deliberately for a completely different build, a Marshall Jubilee clone, which you may or may not have seen posted yet. All right, Marshall backs in. Now, right now, I turned the presence and the treble down a bit with the last transformer test. So this Marshall transformer isn't sounding as bright as it did before, but it's maybe responding a bit better to that presence turn down. It's tamed the high end a bit. I don't know if I'm hearing as much low mid. It doesn't sound bad. It doesn't. Either one of these, I think you could use for an SLO clone build and you would get good results out of it. Now the question is more high volume results. Part of the idea of getting that oversized transformer is as we start to turn this pupper up, it's going to have less propensity to saturate. The fun part, but my least favorite part, because these, you know, I get headaches after making some of these videos. All right, let's crank this pupper up. 2.6 CA7s. I'm gonna have to turn down some microphones here. Okay, so that was 50% volume, and it's tight. The transformer stayed tight. Well, it's 50% on the dial. I guess let's turn it up until we start hearing this fall apart, even though it could be the tubes and not the transformers. So the system definitely falls apart after 6. Because like halfway on this dial, these dials go to 9 is 4.5. So 5 is just over 50%. And 6 is like, you know, I don't have an analog clock to look at right now. 12, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, sure. Now the volume didn't increase much past 50% all the way to 6, but I was liking the roar I was getting at 50% at 4.5 on this guy. It had that nice Marshall roar that I usually associate with Marshall, repeating myself. But then that's when I load the Marshall with these tubes. The JJ60A7s are one of my favorite tubes for a nice dark tone. Let's go back to the 1750D. What's saturating? Is it the transformer or is it the tubes? We'd have to get a 100-watt configuration going on here to know for sure. You know what? I think the Marshall might have a warmer roar. I might like the sound of the Marshall transformer a bit better at the high volumes. Let's go all the way to 6, 7, 8, see if it breaks up. You know what? I feel like this guy held together a little bit better, turned to 6 than the Marshall did. And that could be partly because of the higher impedance load is keeping those tubes under better control. And obviously it's a higher wattage rated transformer. Like the core is clearly physically larger than the Marshall, but I almost feel like I like the sound of the Marshall better. I need to swap them back. All right, here we go. Let's hear that Marshall again. yeah, I think the Marshall transformer might have a slightly tighter low end response at high volumes, but the twin transformer has a slightly warmer low end at high volumes. The Marshall has a little bit more of an aggressive high mid frequency texture, whereas the twin transformer is a bit softer, but then I think the twin transformer goes a bit higher frequency, which if you look at the spec sheets online, the twin transformer 15K, the Marshall transformer, oh, it's also 15K. I swear those numbers were different. I'm also noticing a little bit more high-end chirp out of the twin transformer, a little touch more of that ice pick. So, either way, either one of these transformers I think would make an excellent substitute. If you're doing a clone, an SLO build, I don't think you could go wrong with either one of these. I almost kind of wish I got the 100-watt Marshall transformer to compare what that would sound like, but I think my budget for transformers is a bit exhausted at this point. Especially, you know, I have that guy, I'm gonna use it. I'm not gonna be disappointed with it, especially at the volumes I jam at. Obviously, it's gonna sound different in a band arrangement, and it's gonna sound different at low volumes, because indeed, I was preferring the sound of the twin at lower volumes, which is how I'm mostly gonna use this amp realistically noodling at home. I'm not in a band, and even if I am, I'm a death metal bassist. I haven't played guitar live in almost 20 years. But yeah, if you're looking to do an SLO build or any number of these builds, I would not hesitate to try a Hammond transformer, an affordable. Both these transformers were only about $120 Canadian, and they propose a very good value. Very good. And I also, you know, maybe good old Marshall's not a bad choice. 100-watt Marshall transformer, if it sounds like this at higher volumes, yeah, you're gonna like it. And maybe at more moderate volumes, go for the twin, the 1750D. I think knowing what I know now, if I was gonna do a 100-watt SLO build, I might get the Marshall transformer, but the twin transformer would be good for a 50-watt build, just with that little configuration change. So, that said, I'm gonna go ahead and install this transformer permanently into this chassis, along with the replacement power transformer I purchased, which is a very interesting old vintage beast, but that's for another video, so stay tuned to find out. And my ears hurt. Kinda sick of getting headaches from doing this high volume. Oh, I should wear earplugs, bud. Well, yeah, but then I wouldn't be able to friggin' hear the nuances in the tone.